What if you are wrong about what will make you happy? What if the future you imagine enjoying is very different from the future you will actually experience? And what if the human mind is surprisingly bad at predicting its own happiness? These are the fascinating and often unsettling questions explored in Stumbling on Happiness by Daniel Gilbert, a book that reveals how our minds misunderstand pleasure, satisfaction, and the future we are constantly chasing. Gilbert begins with a simple observation. Humans spend enormous amounts of time thinking about the future. We imagine careers, relationships, achievements, and lifestyles, all guided by the belief that we know what will make us happy. Yet research consistently shows that we are remarkably poor at forecasting our future emotional states. We misjudge both how good and how bad things will feel, and how long those feelings will last. One of the book's central ideas is affective forecasting. This is the process by which we predict how future events will make us feel. Gilbert explains that our predictions are often inaccurate because they are based on incomplete information, biased memories, and flawed assumptions. We imagine futures without fully accounting for adaptation, context, and the mind's ability to cope. Gilbert introduces the concept of psychological immune system. Just as the body has an immune system that heals physical injuries, the mind has mechanisms that help us recover emotionally from disappointment, loss, and failure. When something goes wrong, our minds reinterpret events, shift values, and find meaning. As a result, negative experiences often hurt less and for a shorter time than we expect. This psychological immune system explains why people often adapt surprisingly well to situations they once feared. Studies show that people who experience major setbacks, such as job loss, disability, or relationship breakdowns, often return to baseline happiness faster than expected. We underestimate our resilience. At the same time, we overestimate the lasting joy that positive events will bring. Another key idea in Stumbling on Happiness is the problem of focalism. When we imagine the future, we focus too much on a single event and ignore everything else that will also influence our happiness. For example, someone might believe a new job or relationship will determine their happiness, overlooking daily routines, relationships, and personal habits that matter just as much, if not more. Gilbert explains that happiness is influenced less by major life events than by small, consistent factors. Sleep, social connection, purpose, and daily autonomy often matter more than dramatic changes. Because these factors are harder to imagine vividly, we give them less weight when predicting happiness. The book also explores how memory distorts happiness. We do not remember experiences accurately. Instead, we remember peaks and endings. This is known as the peak-end rule. A vacation with one amazing moment and a pleasant ending may be remembered more fondly than a consistently enjoyable one with an unpleasant ending. Our memories guide future decisions, even when they are misleading. Gilbert argues that because memory is flawed, learning from experience is harder than we think. We trust our memories, but they simplify reality. This leads us to repeat mistakes and chase experiences that feel good in memory, but not necessarily in reality. Another fascinating idea in the book is the distinction between experienced happiness and remembered happiness. Experienced happiness is how we feel moment to moment. Remembered happiness is how we evaluate an experience afterward. These two are often very different. Decisions are usually based on remembered happiness, not experienced happiness, which leads to poor choices. Gilbert also examines the illusion of choice. We often believe that having more options increases happiness. However, Research shows that too many choices can increase anxiety, regret, and dissatisfaction. When options are abundant, we focus on what we might be missing instead of enjoying what we have. The book challenges the assumption that freedom always increases happiness. Constraints can sometimes enhance satisfaction by reducing regret and decision fatigue. When choices are limited, commitment increases and appreciation deepens. Another key theme in stumbling on happiness is the role of comparison. Humans evaluate happiness relative to others and to expectations. Absolute conditions matter less than relative ones. This explains why increases in wealth often fail to increase happiness. As standards rise, satisfaction stays the same. Gilbert also discusses how humans construct happiness rather than discover it. Happiness is not something waiting in the future to be found. It is something the mind actively creates in the present. The psychological immune system plays a central role in this construction, helping us make sense of what we have rather than what we lack. The book explores the idea of synthetic happiness versus natural happiness. Natural happiness comes from getting what we want. Synthetic happiness comes from wanting what we get. Gilbert argues that synthetic happiness is just as real and durable as natural happiness, yet people undervalue it. We believe happiness must come from achieving goals, not from adapting to outcomes. This misunderstanding causes unnecessary suffering. People fear outcomes they could adapt to and chase goals that provide only temporary satisfaction. Recognizing the power of synthetic happiness can reduce anxiety and regret. Gilbert also addresses the fear of commitment. People often avoid commitment because they fear making the wrong choice. But research shows that commitment increases satisfaction. When people commit, they stop comparing and start investing emotionally. Commitment allows the mind to create meaning and contentment. The book also examines how culture shapes happiness expectations. Societies promote narratives about success, romance, and fulfillment that influence what people believe will make them happy. These narratives are often inaccurate. Questioning cultural assumptions can free individuals from chasing the wrong goals. Gilbert emphasizes the importance of trust in others. One surprising finding is that people are happier when they rely on advice and experience from others rather than trusting their own predictions. Learning from others' experiences often leads to better decisions than relying on imagination alone. Another important lesson is humility. Understanding how flawed our predictions are encourages humility in decision-making. It reminds us to remain flexible, curious, and open to adjustment. Happiness is not a destination. It is a dynamic process. The deeper message of stumbling on happiness is not pessimistic, it is liberating. If we stop believing we must get the future exactly right to be happy, pressure decreases. If we trust our capacity to adapt, fear loosens its grip. Life becomes an experiment rather than a test. The book ultimately teaches that happiness is less about controlling outcomes and more about understanding the mind. When we stop chasing perfect futures and start appreciating present experience, satisfaction grows. The big takeaway from stumbling on happiness is clear. Humans are poor predictors of future happiness, but excellent adapters. Trusting this ability can reduce anxiety, regret, and unnecessary striving. Happiness is not found by planning perfectly. It is stumbled upon through living, adapting, and learning. So, what assumption about happiness might you be getting wrong? What future outcome are you chasing that may not matter as much as you think? And how might trusting your ability to adapt change how you live today? Share your thoughts in the comments And if you enjoyed this summary, like this video, subscribe to 10-Minute Books, and tap the bell so you never miss our weekly deep dives into life-changing books. Remember, happiness is not something you find in the future. It is something your mind knows how to create.